What's up, guys? Today we're doing the rating climb from 14 to 1600. Let's find some games. Alright, we got a 1504. I'm black. I actually just played this guy. I was white, but I had some issues with my mouse, and I just didn't save that game. So, but yeah, we'll go for black. So I'll play this gambit. I've been experimenting with this. Basically give up a pawn to try to get quick development, open files. And so give up the first pawn, give up the second pawn, and we'll see if he can accept it. I'll take back with the bishop. If he doesn't accept it, eventually I'll just recapture the pawn. But I like when they do take it. Most d4 openings tend to be kind of positional and not so great as far as like playing tactical and aggressive positions, but this kind of mixes things up. Okay, bishop g5 is one of the better moves, actually. So I have to block. I'll play f6. The idea is that if he recaptures, I'm going to recapture with the knight and get this open, half-open f file. And so after like bishop e7 castles, I can get some pressure along here eventually. I do have to be a little careful because it does open up these diagonals. These diagonals. And so I have to watch out for tricks like that. But usually if I'm able to castle quickly, I can put my king in the corner and it's relatively safe. So that's kind of what my plan is probably going to be. Although sometimes I will consider castling queenside. Now, he has a pin on this knight, so right now I'm just thinking about, if a move like knight d5 would be very good for him to kind of put some pressure on that. So I'll go ahead and play bishop e7 just to break that pin right away. And it also sets up if I want to castle kingside, I have the ability to do that. So I'm down a pawn, but I do have two half-open files, and hopefully we'll get to see that in this game, how those open files can be very important. So he played e3. He obviously wants to complete his development, bring this bishop out. Most likely he wants to go to c4 because, like I talked about, this is a weak diagonal now because I've given up this pawn. So I'm considering playing bishop e6 just to prevent him from going there. I could also castle, and after he goes there and checks me, I could move to the corner. But then the problem with that is he does still control that diagonal, and I don't think I want to let him do that. So I'm pretty sure bishop e6 is the move that I want to play. I'm just kind of considering, are there any other moves that make sense? Knight e5 prevents that, but he can just capture, so that's not going to work. d5 prevents that, but it looks like I'm losing a pawn because he can trade here and then capture this guy. So yeah, I don't see any reason not to play bishop e6. It's a developing move, and like I said, takes control of that important diagonal. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And by delaying this, I'm still giving myself the option, if I want to, I can play queen d7 and castle queenside. Okay, a3 seems like a interesting move. I'm not sure if he thought I was going to want to go there or what the point of that is, but it looks like it kind of wastes some time. Like, I think he would have probably been better to play bishop e2 or bishop d3 to complete his development. Anyway, I'm considering castling kingside. I like the fact that I'm developed, so then naturally the next thing that you want to do is castle. And I like that I have this, like I said, half-open file, so putting my rook there right away seems like it makes a lot of sense, so I will go ahead and do that. And then next step after developing and castling usually is connecting your rooks. So queen d7 is probably what I'm going to play. And then I could bring this rook over to the other half-open file and have both rooks lined up there. I'm just checking this. It's being attacked, but I'm not worried. It's defended twice, and even if he trades this off, it's still defended, so I'm not worried about that. I'm just scanning the board for any other moves that seem better than queen d7, but right now I don't really see much, so I'm going to play queen d7, connect my rooks, and most likely this rook will come over to the e file next. So yep, considering playing here, I'm just again scanning for other moves. Like I could play bishop g4 and pin this knight. Not sure that I'm ready to give up this diagonal just yet, but that's an option. I think I'd like to get this rook over first. I could also move this knight somewhere and to create this attack on his bishop, he'll probably trade it off. But again, I think I would like to have this rook in position first, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So now I have both rooks lined up on these half-open files. I've completed my development, I've castled. And I think this is the stage in the game when a lot of players don't really know what to do. They'll do this and then it's like, okay, now what? And so what I like to do first and foremost is don't blunder. Okay, don't make any mistakes. So that's my top priority when I get into a position like this. So what that means is every time my opponent makes a move, I'm going to be looking very carefully, okay, what is he threatening? What about the position changed from before? And am I going to be making any mistakes? Okay, so here's a good example. What changed about the position before and what is he threatening? Well, he's threatening this bishop. He's threatening this knight. So I have to be aware of that. But also, an important thing is he opened up this diagonal for his queen. Now, his queen can't go there right now because my knight, but that knight could get traded off. Maybe his queen could come to h5 after, and there could be an attack on my king, right? So I'm thinking about that immediately because I see, okay, the queen is now opened up, right? So that's something to keep in the back of my mind. Also, do I want to give up this bishop for this knight? Not really. Like, this is a really strong bishop controlling a lot of important squares, particularly this diagonal. So I don't think I want to just let him capture that. If I do, then my king and queen are going to be lined up and I have to watch out for this bishop at some point pinning me, right? So because of all that, I'm leaning towards potentially capturing the knight. It seems like maybe the easiest way to deal with that and not give up my bishop. But I could also move my bishop somewhere. So like bishop g4, I'm considering, what happens if I move there. Attacks his queen. Looks like he could just block with f3 and I have to maybe retreat. I could also drop back to f7 to not get captured by the knight. That's a little bit passive and it does, block my rook, which is starting to open up, right? There's only one piece left and then my rook is starting to become more active. So I like the fact that this rook is getting more active. So I'm leaning towards this move still. Excuse me. But again, the important thing is I don't want to blunder. So constantly checking, for mistakes and ways that I could mess it up. So okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to trade off that knight. I don't want to let that knight trade for this bishop, so that's why I'm going to go ahead and trade that off. And now I'm trying to think of how can I take advantage of the fact that I have both of my rooks in a good position to put pressure on the king side, right? He's got one rook over here in the corner. My rook here is a little bit more active than his rook because, I sacrificed that pawn, but I get the advantage that, hey, my rook is active and his really isn't, right? It's blocked by his own pawn. So most likely the way that that's going to happen is if I make some space so that these rooks can actually do something. So I'm considering where can I move this knight to open up this rook. That's definitely one of my considerations. The other consideration, and this actually kind of goes along with moving this knight, but his bishop here is a little bit more active than my bishop here. So it seems like maybe moving this knight and trading off those bishops would be smart because this is a very passive bishop. That's kind of an active bishop. Trading them off seems like a good trade. I'm also scanning for moves like, bishop g4. I mentioned it before. It attacks the queen, but I don't see much benefit besides that, so I probably won't do that. I'm thinking I could play d5 to open up the square for this bishop to create some pressure along that diagonal. So a move like knight g4 would potentially trade off these bishops, puts pressure on that and that. If I could get, like, let's say he captured, I captured, and if I could bring my queen over to h4, that looks good. The issue that I'm seeing is that if I go there, you know, what if he just takes, and then plays h3 immediately? Am I going to just have to waste a move moving my knight back? If so, then I probably don't want to go there. So that's what I'm considering. I could also go knight to d5. The idea is that maybe after he trades, then this knight could go to f4, which looks like a really nice square for the knight to go to. Now, he could just take it when I go there, and then I would recapture, which puts my bishop on a very nice diagonal. But then he might play c4, chasing my bishop away. And where am I going to go? If I go back, he could play d5, and this bishop is just completely shut out. So I don't like that. Now I am considering if I go there and he captures, I don't have to recapture. I could take his bishop. And that actually looks pretty good. Essentially trading this knight for this bishop. So the question is, if I go there, if he takes me, I take him, that looks, sorry, I take him, that looks good. But if I go there, what if he takes my bishop? What am I going to do? I could take back with the knight to prevent him from trading, or I could take with the rook or the queen, let him trade. My bishop would end up there, and then after a move like c4, what am I going to do? That almost feels like I'm trading off a bit too many pieces. I don't want to trade too many pieces because I am down a pawn. If I go into an endgame, there's a good chance I'll lose just because of the fact that I'm down a pawn. So I don't want to trade off everything. I'm taking a lot of time because I think this is a crucial moment in the game. I think that the next couple of moves are really going to determine what happens in this game. So I'm trying to be very careful and consider a lot of different options. Takes. H3. So, you know, like I just said, I don't want to trade off too many pieces, but I'm not really seeing very many other ways to make progress. So I think I am going to try this move. And after he captures, I'm still debating if I'm either going to recapture with my rook so that I can maybe double up on this f file. I could capture with the queen, with the idea that then my queen can come over to the king side to create an attack. Could also capture with the knight just to keep a few more pieces on the board and potentially come to f5 and h4. So I'm still thinking through that. Okay, and he plays a move I didn't even consider. Knight e4 is, you know, an alternative. He's just defending his bishop that way. So, first move that comes to mind is I could trade it. And after he captures, I don't really like the fact that he has a fork on my bishop and this pawn. I could deal with it by playing bishop f5, but then I have to be careful. Queen h5 could come, and he could get a lot of pressure along these light squares. So I think what I may do instead is just play knight f4. The idea is puts my knight in a really nice square. Maybe I can trade off the bishop, get the bishop pair. And if he takes me, it brings my rook up to, again, another active square. Yeah, I like that square for my knight, so I'm going to play knight f4. And I'm just trying to think about which moves are going to put my pieces on the most active squares. right? And so this is what I think does the best job. So that's why I'm playing knight f4. And I'm being careful for little tricks along this diagonal because my king is there. He does have a light squared bishop currently, so I have to kind of pay attention to stuff happening here. Now, right now, I'm okay because I've got my bishop there, which is covering it. But if I ever decide to move that, I have to be aware he could play bishop c4 and just kind of keep my eyes on that. So if he recaptures my knight, I'm going to take with the rook. I like the placement of my rook. It sets up if I want to double up rooks on that file, I can. If I want to bring it over here to try to pressure that, I can. Okay, so he takes here. I'm obviously going to recapture it. Question is, queen or the rook? Advantage of taking with the rook is that I can very easily double up on the f-file at any point. Advantage of taking with the queen is that now I can relocate the queen over to h4 at some point if I want to. I think I like the ability to bring the queen over there, so I'm going to take with the queen. It also controls this diagonal, so he can't move his knight to g5. If I took with the rook, that could have been an option for him. Not necessarily a good move, but this just does kind of control some of those squares. And so now is kind of a position where tactics play a big part. I have to start looking for tactics and ways to attack his king. I've got the knight in a good position. I've got these rooks in a good position. Bishop and queen are starting to get closer. And then it just comes down to, can you find the tactical trick basically to break through the defenses. So I need to kind of set that up, and that's what I'm going to try to do now. So I'm considering queen h4 just so because it gets closer to his king and puts my queen in a good location to try to find some sort of checkmate. I could trade the knight and get the the bishop against the knight, but my knight is in such a good position that doesn't make a lot of sense. Bishop d5 puts pressure there, but he could just play f3. Although if he did play f3, I would have queen e3 check. Doesn't look good enough, so I'm still looking for something better. Yeah, I think I need my queen to be in a better location. I'm trying to watch the clock because I am going to need to spend some time to figure out what move to play, so I want to leave myself a little bit of time, but I think the queen needs to be closer. So now I'm considering like maybe even sacrificing my knight so that I can bring my bishop in and then open up his king that way. I could play like bishop h3, and if he takes, I take with the queen, try to get checkmate on g2. That actually looks really good. c4. So he's giving me the option. Couple moves that come to mind. Sacrificing there after he takes, I play like bishop h3, he goes back. I trade that. Not sure if it's good enough. Alternatively, I could play bishop h3, captures. Threatening checkmate. I'm trying to see if he can stop that. This is really a position where I would love to have more than a minute to think about. Because I don't, I have to make a decision. this looks like it's going to be hard for him to prevent. So I'm going to go for this one where I recapture and try to get checkmate on g2. I think if he plays the bishop to defend, I can just take it with my rook. If he plays queen f3, it looks like I can play knight e2 check and win the queen. He plays bishop e4 immediately. Okay, so I think I need to sacrifice this just because the bishop is the only piece of his that's really defending this these light squares. So I'm going to remove that, and now I can capture this. The question is, which way is best? I think the bishop is better. I'm forking these pieces. Also setting up a move like knight h3 check. Then I can maybe take this depending on what happens. I also could just trade the... Again, I would love to have more time to think through this. Since I don't, I'm just going to make a move. I have to capture that. I'll go check. I'm going to be able to take this now, which is good. Check. Trying to look for tactical tricks and ideas to either get checkmate, or if I can win his queen, should be able to win from there. He's probably going to go back to g1, and then I'm going to go check and win the queen. If he goes to g2, queen h3, I don't think that's good enough. King g1 takes, check. I mean, at the end of the day, I am up a pawn, but I only have 20 seconds, so I don't really want to go into a knight and pawn endgame up a pawn. I could just take this with my queen. Okay, so this wins his queen because he's in check. Now I can take this. Probably take this pawn next. Now I'm just playing it against the clock. Yet again. Actually, probably shouldn't pre-move that. And that's why. So, but I hope you could see from that game, like, kind of relocating the pieces closer to his king, putting them on good squares, and then finding the tactic at the right moment was how we were able to get into a better position. And if I would have had more time, I think I could have even maybe found a checkmate or some better way to win. But because I didn't have time, I just had to kind of make some quick decisions. Knight's pinned, so he can't take it. I think I may have pre-moved. I pre-moved too early. I didn't realize. I thought his king was on h3. It was actually on g4. That's what happens when you don't have time and you have to pre-move too much. So I need to set up a checkmate. g5 looks like checkmate. Next move. If he plays h3, if he goes back there, is that a stalemate? That is a stalemate. All right. I don't want a stalemate, so I played h5. So he can go there, and then I can checkmate. Yeah, so basic idea behind that game, we can go back and look at it real quick. So I did my little gambit. The whole point of that was just to get open files in a more tactical and kind of active position. And then right about this point, like I said, a lot of players have a hard time kind of knowing what to do. So they develop their pieces, they castle, maybe they connect their rooks, and then they're not really sure. And so like I said, I was just focusing on, first of all, not making mistakes, and then trying to figure out where do I want to create an attack at. So in this case, it's the king side. That's where his king is. That's where my rooks are really set up to attack. He still had this rook over on A1, which is not going to help him defend his king. This rook on F1 was actually pretty passive. I mean, it was defending the F2 pawn, but other than that, pretty passive. My rook is, controlling like all these squares. So that's what I was trying to do. Trading off an active piece of his for an inactive piece of mine was kind of helpful. Putting my knight on a strong square that was doing a lot. So I had the option to trade it for the bishop. It was controlling some squares by his king. Okay, I remember recapturing with the queen so that I could bring it over to the king side. Was an important decision that actually turned out to be, pretty good, I think. I don't know if knight g3 was his best chance to defend, but queen h4, bringing the queen over, and then this is the kind of position where we're doing tactics puzzles is really, really important because you have to be able to spot those tactics. So I'm going to actually, well, I won't do the analysis right now. Yeah, sure, why not? I'll just turn it on. I don't know if it's going to adjust the position of the board. Okay, you can still see it. Awesome. So I'm going to go self-analysis. I just want to see if I missed any obvious moves. So, okay, so right here it says black is slightly ahead. Okay, it didn't like bishop h3. It's saying rook f6. Okay, so rook f6 makes sense, just bringing the rook up, I guess. Yeah, so that I can go over to h6 next and create an attack on here. So that was a really good idea. I didn't actually think of that in the moment. Let's see what after bishop h3. Okay, so rook takes e4 was correct. Knight takes e4. Bishop takes g2 was pretty good. Yep, so... Okay, and even at this point, instead of capturing the rook, it's saying rook f6 is the best move and actually completely winning for black. And the idea is that later I can play rook h6 and just go for checkmate on h2. So this is a common idea, a rook lift on the king side, bring the rook up over, and you can create pressure in positions like this when you're attacking on the king side. Alright guys, thanks for watching. I hope you learned something and that was helpful. Next time we'll do 1600 to 1800. But as always, stay sharp, play smart, and take care.